Hello, everyone. I'm Kenneth Morefield, the current owner and operator of the artsandfaith.com website, which is the site that retains the curated top 100 and top 25 spiritually significant films, and also the editor of the recent anthology Film as an Expression of Spirituality, the Arts and Faith Top 100 Films. I'm delighted to be speaking today with Jeffrey Overstreet. Jeffrey is a teacher of creative writing and film at Seattle Pacific and is probably well known to some of you as the longtime writer at lookingcloser.org or the Substack Give Me Some Light. So, Jeffrey, thank you for joining us.
It's a privilege. Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Excellent. So, um, would the main first question that I try to ask people in promoting the new anthology, what is the title of your chapter in the Arts and Faith anthology, and why did you decide to write it?
The chapter is called To Love and Be Loved in Return. Some people might recognize that as a line in the song Nature Boy that Nat King Cole was famous for and that David Bowie has covered. But it seemed appropriate here. To love and be loved in return. 30 years of discovering Kieslowski's Blue. More completely, that's Three Colors Blue, the first film in the Three Colors trilogy by Krzysztof Kieslowski. That trilogy was released in the early 90s, and I wrote about that film. I'm so grateful that you put out the invitation to write about films from this list, because as I scan through that incredible list of 100 titles, it's sort of like watching your own life flash before your eyes.
Yes.
So many of those films are formative for me, and really influenced my faith, my vocation, my writing, the decisions I've made in my life. And Three Colors Blue is probably at the top of that list. It would be right there anyway, arguably, with Wings of Desire, the Wim Wenders film. So I chose this film because I was 21, 22 when probably 22 when Blue first sort of made a splash, and then arrived in America with those accolades from, I believe it was the Cannes Film Festival. And I was just starting to explore international cinema for the first time. Leaving my childhood home in Portland and moving to Seattle for college was quite a liberating experience. I already had a voracious appetite for the arts, and I was living in Seattle, which was quite a movie city at that point. We had art house theaters everywhere. Most of them are gone now. But I would spend my evenings and weekends bussing around the city, trying to see as much as I could from in any genre from anywhere in the world, just because it felt like I was finally discovering the world I had grown up in and not known about.
Hmm.
Three Colors Blue did not really blow my mind the first time I saw it. I I read about it. It sounded interesting. I had seen Juliette Binoche already in a couple of films and thought she was interesting. I remember thinking, well, that seemed very, very sad and very meaningful. And for those who don't know, in short, it's a film about a grieving widow. In the opening scene, her husband and daughter are taken from her in a car accident, and her husband happens to be, in the world of the film, the world's greatest living composer. And he has been composing a piece that celebrates the hope of the unification of Europe. He dies, the piece is unfinished. There's this big event happening to acknowledge um, the first convening of the European Union, and everyone's expecting this piece of music. There are rumors that maybe she has had something to do with those compositions. Some people even think she is the actual composer, but she chooses to keep that a secret and be private about that. But the movie follows her grieving process of the loss of her husband and daughter, her resistance of the question of, should I have anything to do with the completion of this composition? Her flight from everything that had to do with her early life, to basically hit reset on her whole life in Paris. And then little by little, the past is finding ways to catch up with her. She is haunted by the primary motif of the composition. Clearly, she is not going to be able to escape her past. She is going to have to confront it and work through her grief rather than just denying it. And in short, that's kind of the sketch of the film. I wasn't interested in those questions at the time. I was interested in cinematography. I was interested in music and how it's used in film. I was interested in great performances, and I got all of that. I don't think I'd ever seen a movie in which the music was very clearly central to what was happening. Not even stopping there. The music seemed to be a character in the film. It seemed to be actively pursuing the main character of Julie de Courcy, or as she changes her name back to her maiden name after the loss of her family, to Julie Vignon. And there are all these very intimate moments where, for example, she gets locked out of her apartment in the middle of the night and she's sitting in a dark stairway, and suddenly the music ambushes her and she jolts awake, and she has to reckon with this. What does it mean? And I remember coming away very haunted by that, very impressed by Juliette Binoche's performance, and it has become my favorite performance by any actress in cinema. But then I saw it again. It wouldn't leave me alone. It was sort of like the music not leaving her alone. The movie wouldn't leave me alone. So I went back and saw it two or three more times in the theater, and um, every time I saw it, my brain just sort of exploded by making new connections, realizing that every little thing in this film is deliberate and is connected to other things, so it has to be read as much or more like poetry than straightforward narrative. And I started paying attention to everything from the cross necklace that she's wearing, which becomes extremely significant, to a mobile of blue glass, little blue glass shards that sort of like wind chimes sort of sparkle in her apartment, to the swimming pool she goes to every night. All of these visual elements, oral elements, are waiting to be read and interpreted. And for me, it became sort of the most challenging text I had encountered at the movies. And so I've just gone back to it over and over and over again. And I felt like it was time to write about it. Long story made longer. I felt like it was time to write about it because when the film came out, the European Union was a new thing. And I had just been on a European study tour and had been in the chambers in Strasbourg, I believe, where they were going to convene for the first time, and it hadn't even been used yet. And I felt like I was a part of history standing there. To fast forward to today, where we look at this film that's really wrestling with the question, is this possible? Can these nations reckon with their painful pasts and find a way forward? Or is this just an act of hubris, and are we all living in denial, thinking we can just all get along in view of all the pain that we are carrying? So Julie becomes an avatar of Europe itself. Um,
I
well, here we
hadn't made
are.
this connection when you were writing or when we were publishing. Um, but of course, that makes that a very that's a very topical topic for
Yeah,
America today, you know, in which
absolutely.
polarization and unification is you know, um, maybe the inverse of instead of, separations and trying to come together, and can we do that within the pain of people who have been together for a long period of time and maybe beginning to fall apart or whatever. But
Yeah.
I hadn't necessarily made that connection, but I think that might be another reason why, um, not just significant for your life, but topical for this moment, you know.
The more I wrote, the more purposeful I felt in that. I mean, maybe I may not say this explicitly in the essay. Although I'm sure if you read the whole thing, which I mean, congratulations if you do. It's the longest essay I've ever written. um, uh, it it really felt like I was writing against isolationism
Mm,
in overall. And yeah, that has tremendous relevance for where we are right now and for the
yeah.
election in November. So yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that, because I think, community and connection is such an important part of, um, the Christian experience or the religious experience that we don't often attend to enough. Um,
Yeah.
so in thinking about the arts and faith top 100 films, um, in some of its incarnations, but not all of them, um, this phrase spiritually significant has been attached to it to try to distinguish the arts and faith list from just any random list of the top 100 films. Uh, as I've spoken to a number of people, some people have used that as a criteria for what films they voted for. Others were just like, well, I'm a member of Arts and Faith, and these are my 100 films. That it's a reflection of this community of voters and viewers who existed for about 20 years on the message board, or who came together. Um, and others, are more like, no, it's not just our personal favorites. It is some specific criteria about, which of our favorites are quote unquote spiritually significant. So I try to ask everyone, um, what does that phrase mean to you, if anything, and how much influence did it have on what films you voted for when you voted for Blue or any of the films on the top 100?
Yeah. It's a challenging question. And as you remember, we went round and round and round as a community
Hmm.
trying to figure that out. Um, I think what's at the heart of that question is really what's at the heart of why those relationships have been so important to me since the late 90s when I first started corresponding with Peter Chataway and Stephen Gradanis. Um, and then the community grew. I met you. I met Michael Leary. Eventually, Alyssa Wilkinson and Lauren Wilford and Sarah Welch Larson and writers like that. Um, I better not start going down the list of names, or else
Yeah, because then you forget
I'll
them.
forget very close friends.
Yeah.
But more coffee. Um, but when it comes to voting on this list, I'm not looking for what are the most explicitly Christian films.
Hmm.
Actually, my film class at Seattle Pacific over the years, film and faith. I one time got up in front of the class and accidentally I just tripped over the words and it came out, "Welcome to Filth and Fame." Film and faith.
Hmm.
I thought, now if this was a class on the history of Hollywood, maybe it would be called Filth and Fame. Um, no, the right away the students are nervous that this is going to be a class about Christian movies.
Hmm.
I'm like, well, it may be that by the end of this class, you are finding a new definition of what it might mean to be a Christian movie. I don't like the word Christian as an adjective in almost any context. Um, but I believe that if something resonates with truth, if something is uh, um, if something manifests beauty, to me that those are the languages of God.
Hmm.
So God I believe God works in all kinds of contexts, in all kinds of communities, even within all kinds of religions. I just happen to be a Christian, and I think it's fundamental to my Christianity to believe that God likes to appear in disguise, that God is at work wherever there is something true or beautiful in any language, in any context. I think the scriptures bear that out. And so when I talk about spiritually significant movies, I'm talking about movies that seem to me to be not just illustrating a simple truth like love your neighbor. Although, I mean, there's a lot of,
Mhm.
there's countless movies about, you know, two characters who are nothing alike being thrown into a crisis together and learning to get along. And that's, I mean, that's fine. That's a fundamental truth that resonates with Jesus' teaching, etc. But to me, if I'm considering a film for this list, it is something where I discover greater depths of truth, um, greater measures of beauty every time I see it, in a way that seems relevant to just about all aspects of life. And that sounds like I'm asking a lot of a film if I'm considering it in this context. But scroll down this list, and movie after movie after movie from people all over the world, coming from different cultures and different religions and different worldviews, different genres, very particular in their mise en scène and in their um, in what kinds of questions they're wrestling with. All of them open up opportunities for conversation that will almost inevitably lead us to talking about what we believe and how what we believe um, influences what we see in the film. So, watching Three Colors Blue as a Christian, the first time I was very intent on that cross necklace she was wearing. I'm like, oh,